a very important point in the history of Hastings Park. We are the Friends of Hastings Park, and I think we can say all of us here are friends of Hastings Park. But our little volunteer organization is here today with other community groups and organizations to explain the compelling legal case that we have to demonstrate that the Park Board should govern Hastings Park. We also want to demonstrate the wide support there is for Park Board governance of Hastings Park.
Can the city hand over a public park to a private corporation? What are the implications if our government chooses to start handing parks over to private entities? The city has an obligation under the Charter to allow Park Board to govern park land. Hastings Park was given in trust in 1889 to the city as a public park. And under the Charter, the city has an obligation to allow Park Board to govern it.
Under the governance of the PNE, Il Giardino has been poorly maintained. I've heard from some of our people, removal of graffiti, plant and grass maintenance has no regular schedule. Our community has filed complaints about the state of the park. Also, in the early planning of Il Giardino, our vision was for the park that would be accessible to all of the community, for the Italian community, and all the people who enjoy free of charge. Currently, Il Giardino is gated off during the PNE, and the only way to gain access is to purchase admission to the fair. Also, this park has been rented for exclusive private events, limiting the community's access to Il Giardino for several months of the year. This is not to say that the PNE and Il Giardino cannot coexist. I believe under the Parks Board governance this will be possible. We in the Confratellanza Italo-Canadese would like to see Il Giardino and all of Hastings Park governed by the Parks Board.
Our intention is to make a clear division between PNE taking care of the fair and playland and the Parks Board taking care of the land, governance of the land. So I, on behalf of the Hastings Park Conservancy, would like to see the Parks Board be the main governor of the entire property.
It has become clear that PNE decisions regarding the site have consistently been made through the lens of what is best for the PNE and its operations. This has led to numerous usage decisions that have not reflected community interests. It has also meant that there have been essentially no investments in programming for community use at Hastings Park. It is time for a change. It is time for a recognition that Hastings Park is in fact a park, and as such should be under the jurisdiction of the Parks Board, like every other park in Vancouver is.
Hastings Park is just that, a park. And as such, the preservation of its natural values is at least as important as anything else that occurs within the park. Nature Vancouver therefore wishes to be on record as recommending strongly that the Vancouver Park Board be given the primary authority for the management of this important park. And I'll close by saying that if the City of Vancouver wants to be seen as emphasizing green values, it can do no better than authorize the Park Board to govern the park.
That the Park Board urged Council to support the Park Board governance option as outlined in the Hastings Park Governance Review, because it's the best option for the following reasons. First, to increase public access to green space and recreational use. To ensure transparency and accountability in decision making. To ensure compliance with City and Park Board initiatives, such as the Greenest City Action Plan, the Urban Forest Management Plan, the Biodiversity Strategy, and the Vancouver Sports Strategy. And last but certainly not least, to improve the care and maintenance of all green space in Hastings Park. But Park Board governance would ensure that we have a fair and a park, and not a park and a fair. I am hopeful that City Council will decide tomorrow to give our independently elected Park Board the ability to govern Hastings Park, as is legally set out in the Vancouver Charter.
So what we really need is governance being given to a publicly elected body that is directly accountable to the people, and then you know that people's best interests will be represented, or they will hear very strongly from the people if they're not.
We're talking about a governance issue. We're not talking about a fair versus something else issue. We're talking about governance. And the three reasons are this, that first of all, there's the legal status of our land. This is permanent parkland, and according to the charter, it is needing to be governed by the Parks Board. In fact, if the City Council decides, after 10 years of planning that's gone on, if they decide to give this park to anything other than the Parks Board, you're actually decommissioning its status, and that would require provincial decisions to do so. There were provincial decisions in 2003 regarding the P&E Enabling Act. That's to do with the liability of the city for how this property gets used. But the status of the property was never changed. It's still permanent parkland, and according to the charter, it must be the Parks Board. The second reason is practicality. How does it work to give the park to one of its tenants to manage? There are many, many users here. In fact, before the Empire Bowl was taken away 3 years ago, which still has not been returned, there was 27 sports groups using that field. There is the Giants who use the hockey rink. There's different rentals that go on. All of those revenue streams are continuing to come into this property, but to take one of those streams, the fair, and give one tenant governance will not work. The other problem with the practicalities is that the current plan that staff has put forward to council does not account for 20% of our park. The racetrack and the casino operate unaccounted for in the plan that's put forward to council by the staff and KPMG consultants. So it's very important that we have one governor who can be objective, that all users and all tenants can go to. And the last reason that it needs to be Parks Board is a financial reason. Often people think that we don't have the money to do anything but the P&E. Actually, that's ludicrous. If Parks Board is in charge, all of the revenue streams are still there. The current uses can still be used the same way. It's simply a different governing body, and a governing body that comes with our tax dollars. Rightfully, some of our tax dollars should go to this portion of the city as well. It is one of our parks.
I'd like to thank everyone here for coming today. This is a very, very historic moment in the history of Hastings Park. Tomorrow, the City Council will decide. We know that last week they could have decided, and they did not. And we hope that they are giving this that important second thought